today's speaker, Raghu, right? And then he will take it up from there. Okay, so Raghu comes with close to 20 years of experience in the recruiting domain, and then he's been training recruiters, helping recruiters upskill for last 8 years, right? So Raghu's expertise is more around setting up TA teams. He has helped large corporates in setting up TA teams, helping their teams evolve, right? And he has been responsible in setting up large RPOs for recruitment agencies. And for last 4 years, Raghu has been mentoring and coaching recruiters, right? So that's where we thought like we'll bring in Raghu, help you guys understand how can we future proof TA, right? How the roles are evolving, how is that as recruiters or talent acquisition professions we look forward and shape our careers, right? Keeping the future in mind. So I welcome Raghu to this session. So Raghu will take it up from there, right?
Thanks, Ashfaq. Hi, folks. Good evening. I welcome all for this interaction. So, yes, let's start the conversation. Okay, first of all, thank you, all of you, for taking time out on a working day to have this conversation. This will be more of a conversation / interaction than a session per se. But yes, yeah, I would have preferred a more interactive back and forth kind of a session, but given the size of the audience, it will be one way mostly, and we will have a quick 8-10 minute window for Q&A if required at maybe 7:55, and we can extend the session by about 5-10 minutes if required. Okay, so let's get going. So I hope you are able to view my screen, all of you. Yep, I'm assuming that you're able to view my screen. Okay, so the theme of the conversation is career planning in a post-COVID recruiting world. Here, the funny part is we're assuming we're post-COVID, actually, but actually, we are not yet post-COVID. COVID is pretty much present and real, and it's there. But yeah, we are a few months away from being post-COVID, I would say, given the current indications and predictions. Okay, now why is this conversation important? I request all of you to go on mute. Okay, why is this conversation important, particularly today? See, one is COVID has changed a lot of things, especially for the recruitment world. Okay. One, it has brought in a lot of focus, attention, rigor in digital transformation of the entire TA function or the TA business or the TA world. See, we've been hearing a lot about automation, digital, and automation, digital, AI is a abused, overused word these days, and we've been hearing it for a few years now. So even though there has been so much conversation around this, if you look at a typical TA context, at least in our country, we've not seen much digital transformation happening. We've not seen much tech adoption happening. We've not really seen disruption in the way recruitment is being conducted. While there are so many conversations about automation, digital, and transformation, and all of that, right? But what COVID did is something very interesting. COVID it forced a digital evolution that was there sitting on the fence for a while. So what COVID did is people had to go virtual. People had to explore technology tools and frameworks to make the whole remote recruiting, virtual recruiting work. And they had no other choice. The same TA heads, the same CIOs who are sitting on the tech budget, thinking and being tentative, were forced to approve budgets, were forced to acquire tech, were forced to go digital because everything went virtual and remote. So COVID, in a sense, has brought a fundamental change and shift in the way recruitment is going to happen in the near future or from here on, I would say. Okay. So which is why the theme is career planning in a post-COVID recruiting world, because post-COVID world will be significantly different from what we've seen in the past. Okay. So now let's start this conversation, right? So in my personal opinion, world's best recruiters, they essentially solve business problems, but it is incidental that they bring in talent. Okay, I have had an opportunity and fortune of interacting with some of the world's best recruiting minds, given my nature of work, which is talent acquisition, coaching, and mentoring. I contribute my content and my research findings to multiple bodies across the world. Given my nature of work, I've had the fortune and I would say good opportunity of interacting with some of the most brilliant recruiting minds in the world. And there is one thing that I find common in across these people that I think are some of the best recruiting minds. They're essentially focused on solving business problems. While they'll end up sending resumes, they'll end up writing an X-ray, trying to find some hidden talent in some corner of the world. They pitch the role, they schedule the interview, they negotiate the salary. All these are incidental, in my opinion. But the fundamental underlying theme is that they're trying to solve a business problem through talent-led interventions. Okay, right? Okay, now what are we going to discuss today? It says 60 minutes, but yeah, I am hoping that if we have a little bit of extension, about 5-10 minutes, that you guys are okay, right? So one, we will discuss a changing recruitment landscape. What are the fundamental structural changes that are happening? We will spend some time on future of work for all of us, which includes me, you, and everybody in the recruiting world. And we'll try and see if we can explore a learning path for all of us, how to become consultative from being transactional. This is broadly the theme for the day. Okay, it's time to future-proof your recruiting career because of the way things are happening. So let's spend some time on what are the changes that we see and what is this changing recruitment landscape that we are talking. Okay, so the point is like this: in the pre-COVID world, which all of us were recruiting in, there was a significant amount of in-person interaction with candidates, right? And I mean, all of us know our hiring managers, all of us know our clients, all of us know our TA heads telling us, hey, at least one round has to be in person, right? And only in a scenario where an individual cannot travel, that's when we used to do a Zoom call or a Teams call as an exception, and we used to take the screenshot and send multiple approvals to get a person on board to make an offer because we have not met him in person. I'm sure all of us can relate to those conversations. But in the post-COVID world, where candidate is not even coming into your premise, there is something fundamentally different about this particular recruiting process, which is, so you all have to understand the importance of candidate mind share that your brand is able to naturally command in the entire interaction. So the point is, in a pre-COVID world, candidate was visiting you guys in person, and the interaction is to happen with some of your leaders, multiple stakeholders, meet the candidate. The candidate gets to develop a feel of the organization by being physically there in the office. Maybe you can show off your gourmet cappuccino that you serve in your in your cafeteria, and all of that. And as a result of this collective experiences that a candidate goes through, there is a resultant mind share for that candidate with your employer brand. Right now, in the post-COVID world, where there is zero in-person interaction, you have lost all that leverage. All that leverage, absolutely. Now, you may have a 1 lakh square feet campus with best designed interiors with jazzy looking cafeterias and neatly manicured garden. All that is gone, at least for next 6 months to 1 year. Recruiting will remain virtual, in my opinion, because we're at least a few months, 6 to 10 months away from mass vaccination happening and all of that if you start talking. But I think we're at least about a year, 10 months to 12 months away from recruiting, getting actually through in-person interactions. So organizations have lost that leverage of what they had in the pre-COVID world. So more and more organizations will be forced to depend on employer and talent branding led recruiting efforts. Okay, this will be a fundamental change that I see happening over next few months or quarters. Number one. Number two, as a result of this, what will happen? There will be a balance between outbound and recruiting efforts. Now, all of us know, some of us who are part of the corporate TA functions, your outbound recruiting channel contributes to about 90% of your hires, and about 10% is contributed by your inbound. So what do we mean by outbound versus inbound? Your active outreach that you do when you reach out, when you send that email, when you make that call, when you send those mass mails, trying to reach out to your potential candidates is what we refer to as outbound. Inbound is driving traffic to your landing pages, career sites, and as a result of your job promotion, as a result of your branding efforts, as a result of some of the promotional activities that you do, candidates land up applying. Now, in the post-COVID world, since there is going to be more and more spend on employer and talent branding, the contribution of recruiting efforts will increase, which means the future recruiting professionals need to be very, very hands-on when it comes to inbound recruiting capabilities, which currently is obviously missing with most of us, right? Number three, candidate experience will be the most critical lever. Why is this? Because point is, again, in the post-COVID world, imagine, right? Entire interaction is virtual, and all the interactions are through your online mediums like Teams and Zoom and other tools, which means every small, minute detail of your candidate journey has to be crafted to ensure that the experience is good. Right from the way your JDs are crafted, right from the way your call letters are sent, right from the way you do a follow-up for an interview, what were the nature of questions that were being asked, how do you gather, so everything, right? The entire candidate journey has to be re-looked at to ensure that a candidate experience, see, it's like this, right? We have an overdose of virtual interactions, webinars and whatnot, and team meetings and so on and so forth, right? So we are all left with, at the end of the day, with a sense of fatigue, right? I mean, when you have 4 meetings back to back in person in a conference room versus 4 Teams or Zoom call back to back, you are left with a sense of fatigue at the end of the day when all your interactions are virtual. So that is the same for your hiring process, right? So unless and until the candidate experience is finely crafted through your neatly engineered journey maps for candidates, talent attraction will be a challenge. And already it is becoming a challenge, if you ask me, because now hiring is picked up in last 4 to 6 weeks, and organizations are facing huge challenge as far as talent attraction is concerned. So yes, organizations will be forced to deliver personalization at scale. So personalization at scale is a in general theme that picked up a lot of steam and traction in the post-COVID world, because most of the businesses are going digital. Most of the interactions are online, which means there is a significant need to personalize interactions, which means your future recruiting tools, your ATS, your CRM systems, they will all be designed to deliver personalization at scale. This is as far as talent attraction is concerned. What is the second dimension of the changing recruitment landscape, which is tech? So yes, there will be a lot more adoption of tech in the post-COVID world. You will see HR tech as an industry seeing bigger investments. We'll see HR tech as a sector seeing a lot of traction. You'll see many more startups coming up. And in general, TA heads will be given a lot more budgets to drive tech. agenda than what they've seen in the pre-COVID world. Okay. Of course, we've heard about chatbots for 3-4 years now, but it's ultimately becoming a reality. So, in my consultant business, I drive a lot of initiatives around HR tech implementation for my customers, and I see a lot more openness with my customers to, experiment with tech. And in last 3 to 4 months, I've already implemented about 4 different chatbots in 4 different TA functions to drive multiple things. So in the post-COVID world, chatbots will be the epicenter of the candidate experience management, and it's already happening. I've already completed about 3-4 assignments in this particular space. So talent assessment systems will go through a change, and see, it's like this, right? You just look at it, and some of us who are part of the corporate TA teams will relate to when I'm saying this. You had a hiring manager who had an opportunity to spend 90 minutes with a candidate in an interview room in person. There's a pen and a paper in front of you. There is a notebook. You could simply write something on your notebook and hand over that piece of paper or a notebook to the candidate. Ask the candidate to write something, solve, jointly scribble something on on the whiteboard. Observe the body language. Look at the confidence level of the candidate. What are the gestures? What are the hand movements, eyeball movements? You have so many cues with a candidate when you're with the candidate in person. In spite of all this, hiring managers were making terrible mistakes. And we all know the accuracy of hiring. And we all know how many of our hiring managers hire through gut and how many of our hiring managers hire through objective evidence for fitment. Just imagine overnight, the same set of hiring managers and interviewers are expected to make accurate hiring decisions through a Zoom call or a Teams call. And are we even expecting this to happen seamlessly, this entire change? No. In fact, I ran a small survey amongst a small TA community that that I'm part of, and I ran a survey on the quality of hiring that happened between April and May, particularly the initial 2 months of lockdown. And all these people joined eventually. All the offers that went out in April and May joined in June, July. And number of hires that they have gone wrong with has almost shot up by 2 times. Because interviewers are just not trained enough to make a hire through a Zoom or a Teams call. And it's anybody's guess, which means assessment systems, tools, templates will go through a significant amount of change to mitigate the risks associated with virtual hiring practices. And more assessment systems and processes will be more evidence-led. So this is what we're going to see in terms of the changing recruitment landscape. So what are the other dimensions? Other dimensions is candidate expectations have changed, right? And of course, it's always there, but now it's becoming more pronounced, which is candidate expectations are how am I being dealt with? What is the experience? What's the digital footprint? What do I see in terms of content around culture? What do I see content in terms of what does the organization stand for? All this was always there, and we've been talking about it, but it's become more pronounced in the post-COVID world because of the lack of in-person interactions of candidates. So they tend to, rely more on what they can see and what they can feel than what they've seen and what they've heard, which otherwise would have happened through an in-person interaction. And most of our interactions are highly transactional and impersonal. We all know it because we're just overwhelmed with transactions, right? We're just too overwhelmed with transactions, and that leaves us with no room and space and mind share for actually personalizing interactions. But I don't think we have a choice now, right? We have to leverage tech, and we have to leverage certain certain way of thinking to see if we can turn every transaction into an interaction. Okay, so let's begin the journey towards becoming a next gen consultative talent consultant. So the theme of today's session is future-proofing our TA careers. So when I say future-proofing TA careers, we've already spent some time on understanding how things are changing, which means uh, the future recruiting world is for recruitment consultants who are essentially by fabric, by nature, consultative because of a few reasons that we will discuss from here on. Okay, we've heard this a million times. Be strategic, right? And at least in my time that I spent in the corporate TA world, I have heard this term strategy million times in a day. So I think we have to understand the word strategy, right? In simplest terms, strategy means a chosen path to a destination, right? Which means, hey, your destination is a specific hiring outcome. Tell me, how can we get there in the most predictable, defined, and structured manner? I think in simplest term, that's what a strategy would be. I wanted to set this record straight around what strategy is because we all hear this a million times in a day. Be strategic, don't be tactical, don't be transactional. So let's touch upon few of these elements today. So I would like to start off this journey towards becoming a consultative talent consultant by discussing some elements of talent acquisition value chain. So there are three dimensions to talent acquisition value chain: supply, fulfillment, and impact. We all began our careers with focus on supply. Can I send 10 resumes today? Can I send 20 resumes today? Can I ensure that there is sufficient amount of candidates in my pipeline? Can I ensure that at any point in time there are no escalations on pipeline at least, right? So you start off with focus on supply adequacy as we call it. Then slowly we start moving our focus, energies, and attention on fulfillment. Hey, supplies, I know supply, I know Boolean, I know X-ray. I'm very conversant with Naukri, I'm conversant with LinkedIn. I know how to use my ATS. I know how to mine my own repository or database that I have. I can ensure supply. So moment you are able to address supply adequacy, then you start channelizing your energies, attention on fulfillment. Hey, then you say, hey, am I able to drive fulfillment? Out of 80 positions that were tagged to me in this quarter, how many positions did I fulfill? And am I able to, drive my fulfillment rate in the range of 85-90%? And can I even quantify the so-called billing loss, revenue loss, potential loss, opportunity cost of hiring delays? You start having those conversations, which is stage 2. Stage 3 is when you actually, which very few people actually even talk about this actually. I have trained about 8,000 recruiters in across 7 different countries in last 7 years. And in my opinion, in my observation, not even opinion, right? I'm not opinionated at all. In my direct observation of having dealt with 8,000 odd recruiting professionals, not more than 4-5% of the recruiting community that I have met actually talk about impact, which is, hey, I mean, how am I even impacting the BU that I am responsible for, or the project that I'm responsible for, or the stakeholders that I'm responsible for? The kind of talent, quality of talent, nature of talent that I'm bringing in, is it really adding value for business? Am I helping my BUs build competitive advantage in the marketplace by simply ensuring a constant supply of top talent? Am I able to bring top 10% of the talent into my organization? How many of the hires that I have done in last 1 year have been rated 4 out of 5? And so am I able to, as a talent acquisition consultant, am I able to create an impact? So the point is, in the post-COVID recruiting world, I don't think we have a choice. I think the idea of employment security, at least for some of the support functions like recruiting, I think will just simply vanish, because in next 6 to 8 quarters, I think the world will be turned upside down for us for we recruiters actually, because fundamentally things will change. Okay, which means room for recruiters who are essentially transactional, who are not even talking about impact that they are able to create for their set of businesses. I'm not even sure how many of them will even stay employed in a few years from now, because that's the pace at which the change is happening, right? Which means it's not a choice anymore. We will be forced to eventually, start thinking about the impact that we're able to create. So this is a typical talent acquisition value chain: supply, fulfillment, and impact. So if we want to future-proof our talent acquisition careers, I think fundamentally we have to start measuring, assessing, tracking, quantifying the impact that we as recruiters are able to create for the businesses that we support, right? Okay, let's fast forward a little bit and let's talk about 2025 role of a recruiter, right? Take it from me. This is not a science fiction movie that I'm talking about. This is real. Change is real. It's present and it's happening, whether we adapt to it or not. Recruiting roles will evolve and will go through a fundamental change in a few years from now. Okay. Good news is it will create opportunities for those who can seize them. Okay. Let's look at a JD of talent acquisition consultant on how it would possibly look in 2025. And I want to spend a lot of time on this particular slide today. Okay. Let's look at this, right? For more than 50% of the audience who are on this call today, your JD will possibly look like this in 2025. Let's go line by line, right? And I would like to throw some light on this. Okay. Assume the shared responsibility for hiring-led business outcomes and build collaborative hiring culture within organization. Sorry for the typo there. Okay. One of the areas where me and Ashfaq do a lot of specialized work is build collaborative hiring culture, systems, and processes in organizations. See, if you look at top 25 organizations in the world, as far as their hiring capabilities are concerned, they all have one thing in common, which is their hiring systems, hiring culture, hiring processes are collaborative in nature, which means a business stakeholder, rather a hiring manager, becomes an equal stakeholder in your hiring process. And me and Ashfaq have done this in few other consulting engagements that we have run in the past. Okay, I'll give a few examples. There is something called as pair coding that some of the organizations used to have as part of their hiring process. I'm aware of one company that used to have this sometime back at least. ThoughtWorks used to have this pair coding round as part of their hiring process. So we got inspired by it. So we introduced pair sourcing with few of the customers where me and Ashfaq are consulting, and the results are astounding. I'm telling you, at 15 minutes of pair sourcing process avoided maybe 10 hours of meetings, escalations, emails, reports, justifications of hiring delays, and stuff like that, right? So the only way to succeed in talent acquisition is to make sure that you as a talent acquisition consultant is able to make your hiring manager an equal stakeholder in your hiring process. And can you build those collaborative hiring processes? And always remember, collaboration happens between people who are peers. Collaboration cannot happen in a master-slave relationship, which means if you are going to be an order taker, where hiring manager gives you instructions and you execute it, it's a master-slave relationship where collaboration cannot happen. Collaboration happens between peer groups, and unless you don't act as an equal, position yourself as an equal, and posture as an equal with your hiring manager, and get the hiring manager to get himself or herself invested as in the hiring process as you are, there is no collaboration. So I think a lot of your energies, learning efforts, and focus has to go into getting yourself to a level where you are as equal as your hiring manager in the hiring process. Okay. Okay. So number one. Number two. optimization of critical metrics, transformation-led initiatives to optimize those critical metrics, and enhancing experience for candidates. This will be another significant KRA for you. And there is a slide on critical metrics that I will talk about. So this is another significant KRA for you, which I think will eventually happen. See, as of now, we are all measured by number of hires or number of offers. So, very few organizations we are measured by the candidate experience scores, right? That will change. Your NPS score. My system says bad network quality. In case you're not able to hear me, somebody has to tell me. Ashwak and Yashwant or somebody there, you have to tell me if you're not able to hear me. Am I audible enough?
It's clear.
Okay, take it. Fantastic.
Yes.
Number 3.
Can hear you, Raghu.
Okay, super, fantastic. Number 3, you will be asked to leverage talent intelligence insights to drive and influence talent decisions. As of now, talent intelligence, market intelligence is equated to some table that we fill, which is your Naukri data. 2 years to 4 years in Mumbai, how many candidates? In Pune, how many candidates? In Bangalore, how many candidates? What is the notice period? What is the salary range? This is not talent intelligence, right? So talent intelligence is, is much more deeper, right? And as of now, I mean, many of us are not equipped enough to deal with this talent intelligence needs that we will eventually have within our recruiting functions. That's the third KRA that you will be asked to live up to, which is skill adoption rate. Can you prepare reports on skill adoption rate? Can you publish outflux and influx data for a given role? Talent movement trends. Can you create heat maps across locations in terms of degree of skill? You'll be expected to do all of this in a few years from now, because that's where, see, many of us, at least the one that I saw in terms of the audience profile, right? We have already spent a few years, 4-5 years, right? And typically your inflection point is between 5 years to 8 years. That's the phase in your career where you have to move into the next orbit. And 80-90% of the recruiters miss that opportunity. And moment you miss that opportunity to move to the next orbit in that inflection point in your career, which is between 5 to 8 years, you miss a very, very significant opportunity, right? So it's important that I think many of the audience and the ones who are on the call, I saw some of the profiles at least that I saw, you were between 4, 6, 7 years. And you have to grab this opportunity. I think next few years is that you have. Okay. Number 4, constantly assess talent needs, right? See, it's like this, right? If you look at RFPs and SOWs that are getting signed by some of the IT services companies in last 3 months, they are very, very, very different from signed in the pre-COVID world. Customers are asking transformational outcomes for the same bill rate. Customers are asking a lot, more result for the same buck, or whatever you want to call it, right? So the kind of talent that organizations need today, and eventually what they will need, will be very different. You as a recruiter, you should be able to assess and spot what are the evolving talent needs. For the same project, for the same hiring manager, for the same account, for the same job family, the quality of talent that will be needed in 6 months from now will be different from what you would have seen 1 year back. And you should be able to spot it. Okay. So can you offer consultative handholding on role design, comp benchmarking, and skill composition? Very, very important. See, it's like this, right? A hiring manager does not have his ears or eyes on the ground, right? It's you who are market facing, and you have your eyes and ears on the ground. So the point is, on role design, including giving inputs for the annual goal sheet, what should your next full stack developer should look like? What should be the element of DevOps, CI/CD for a full stack developer? See, we just believe that just because somebody has, Angular and servlets and microservices in their resume, we think they are full stack. Actually, they're not, right? I mean, Full stack is another word which is overused and abused, right? So we will really need real full stack developers joining our services projects in a few years from now. I mean, in a few months from now. So what should role design, com benchmarking, skill composition, can you offer consultative handhold? If not, I think we'll have to equip ourselves to do that, because this is what a future TA role will look like, in my opinion. Okay. And keep, a pulse on general talent market dynamics and take some proactive talent attraction measures. Right? Say, for example, some of the policies that some of the organizations have rolled after the work from home scenario became a reality, became a differentiating factor for many of the candidates to accept their offers. Right? Which means if your HR policies are not contextual the current evolving market dynamics, you may lose out on talent to your competition. If your hiring processes does not take into account, see, I'll tell you, for many of the organizations today, remote hiring means sending a Zoom link. I think they've got it all wrong. They've got it fundamentally wrong. Virtual hiring, structurally very, very different from other modes of hiring. So many of the organizations have not got it right yet. Okay. So the point is, these are changing market dynamics, and unless you don't take proactive measures, talent attraction becomes an issue. Can you contribute to branding strategy? I mean, you will be expected to, actually. And can you contribute to employer branding, talent branding, including content advocacy, conversational marketing? See, simple change of phrases in your JD can bring in 2x more results on your LinkedIn post than what you had. So this is how, in my opinion, your role will look like in 2025. And trust me on this, no exaggeration. Trust me on this. I am not getting inspired by a science fiction movie to show this slide to you. This is going to be a reality very soon, right? Okay, so what questions should I be asking myself as a recruiter? Because we had participants across the spectrum, right from 2 years up to 10 years. That's what I was told by Ashwak and Ashwant. These are sample set of questions and indicative. If I were to be a beginner in a recruiting career, what are the questions I should ask? Am I able to go beyond validation-led conversations with my candidates, which is validation and assessment are fundamentally different. Validation is ascertaining information. Assessment is bringing in a degree of your personal judgment on the candidate as far as fitment is concerned. First fundamental question, if you've spent 6 months or 1 year in your recruiting career, right after 12 months, you should be asking this question. Hey, have I gone beyond validation-led conversations? Am I able to bring an element of assessment, evidence collection in my candidate conversation? And what is the degree of assessment I'm able to conduct? Is it better than what I was that last month? I mean, constantly see what very, very easy barometer to measure whether we are constantly learning, evolving, growing in our recruiting career is my degree of assessment with my candidates. Is it getting better with time? If it is getting better with time, you are evolving, growing, learning as a recruiter. Okay. Am I able to gather enough evidence for fitment? So when I'm presenting my candidates to my hiring managers or my customers, have I gathered enough evidence for fitment? To have a categorical view on why my candidate fits the requirement. Am I adopting structured search models for candidate discovery? Candidate discovery is not going and giving a keyword on so you have to adopt structured search models for candidate discovery, right? Am I doing that? Is my discovery process optimized for different repositories? The way I go on candidate discovery in LinkedIn versus Naukri versus say open internet on Google, is it optimized? So if I were to be a recruiter between 6 months to 36 months of experience, I would say 24 months to be fair, I would ask these questions to myself if I want to future-proof my TA career. If I am in between say 24 months, 36 months to say 48 months, 60 months, that range, what are the questions that I will be asking myself? As a result of my interactions, am I able to naturally command candidate mindshare? So, in my candidate engagement workshops that I conduct, I ask very simple question to my participants. If you call a candidate today, and if you call the same candidate after 3 months, at least the candidate should remember your conversation, if not your name. Okay, nobody will remember your name, of course, after 3 months, but the impact that you are able to create, the mind share that you are able to grab should be so significant that even after 3 months, the candidate should actually recall your conversation, if not your name. That's the first question that I will be asking if I have an experience more than 24 months. Am I able to articulate the employer brand, what it stands for, and the EVP to gain competitive edge? Very important. And if you're going to be having transactional conversations, are you looking out your current notice period? When is a good time? All that are necessary, all that are very integral part of your candidate pre-screening process. But if you've already spent 24 months, 36 months, and if you are yet not able to articulate your employer brand and your core EVPs and which is how you gain a competitive edge, then you're in trouble because you're not growing, you're not evolving. Okay. Am I able to optimize my overall hiring efforts, which is my interview to offer ratio 12 is to 1 or 8 is to 1 or 6 is to 1? My reach out, my prospect to applicant conversion. If I reach out to 40 prospects, and how many of them actually get converted into applicants? And all of these conversations, if I start having, ultimately it leads to optimizing my overall hiring efforts. Am I able to optimize my overall hiring efforts? Am I able to optimize critical metrics? And am I able to use the intake meeting window effectively to manage expectations? And so if I were to be a recruiter between 24 months or 36 months or 48 months, I would be asking these questions to myself as a recruiter. If you have already spent 48 months or 60 months, then I have a lot more deeper questions that I would ask myself. Hey, am I able to craft an accurate, predictable, achievable fulfillment plan based on historical internal data and external talent market data? Am I able to calibrate my sourcing and assessment processes to suit specific hiring context? See, it's like this, right? Let's take an example of a GIC, which is a captive or a services. In a typical services context, IT services organization context to be precise, okay, there may be transformation-led engagements, there may be regular maintenance, enhancement kind of work. So the full stack developer that you have to hire for a transformation-led engagement will be that need there will be very different than hiring a full stack developer for a maintenance, enhancement, regular app dev work. Which means your sourcing approach has to be calibrated differently, your pre-screening has to be calibrated differently, your interview assessment rounds has to be planned very differently. Am I able to do that? Am I able to calibrate my sourcing assessment processes depending on the hiring context? Am I able to leverage my talent landscape data to influence and drive critical decisions? Am I able to bring in an element of operational efficiency, right? And so on and so forth. So I will be asking these questions. And do I enjoy credibility in the talent community? See, if I am a Salesforce company, within the Salesforce community, do I even enjoy credibility? That if I send out a request, the person immediately accept and say, hi, very, very, glad to connect with you. I know that you're very active in hiring Salesforce developers. So these are some of the questions that I would say, go ahead and ask yourself, depending on where you are a beginner, you're mid or senior. And see, it all begins with the right question, right? I mean, if you're able to ask the right questions to ourselves and others, half the problems are solved, in my opinion, right? Okay. How will recruiting roles evolve? What you will be valued for? One thing I can promise you, one thing I can tell you, one thing I can very confidently tell you in this particular webinar that we are having, sourcing as a skill will be de-skilled. Which means you will be not valued for sourcing as a skill in a few quarters from now or a few years from now. Why? Because of whatever changes that are happening, the systems are getting a lot more smarter. See, it's like this, right? 5 years back, X-ray was a Superman skill. Today, X-ray is a common man skill, right? Everybody knows X-ray. Everybody knows flip search, X-ray search. Everybody knows complex nested booleans. Everybody, all that. 5 years back, this was a Superman skill. Today is a common man skill, right? In few years from now, or at least few months from now, you will have enough intelligent systems that will automatically craft contextual search strings depending on repositories. All that will happen. So I am telling you, I am promising you, sourcing as a competency, as a role, will be de-skilled. Which means if sourcing is not your key differentiator as a talent acquisition consultant or as a professional, what is that you will be valued for? Right? Today, we all take a lot of pride in our sourcing abilities. Today, our differentiation is I can source better than the other guy. If that itself is de-skilled, that role, then what is that you'll be valued for? One, your ability to propagate employer brand and build talent communities. Trust me on this. As and when there is more effort and rigor in branding, as and when there is more investments that are being made in recruitment marketing and inbound recruitment capabilities, talent communities will take center stage. And trust me, me and Ashfaq have been talking about talent communities for last 3 years. We never even got one single assignment. In last few months, we've got multiple assignments from multiple customers to build talent communities. Yes, and that's the way at which the change is happening. Can you collaboratively work with diverse stakeholders driving hiring outcomes? Yes, this is another skill that you will be valued for. Your ability to collaborate seamlessly and drive hiring outcomes. And I mean, of course, the idea is not to dwell in detail into some of this because this is a session that is expected to give an overview. Okay, you'll be valued to attract and hire top talent by using top of the line sourcing and assessment systems. You will be valued for leveraging recruitment marketing platforms to build inbound recruitment momentum in your respective TA function that you're part of. This is what you'll be valued for. Sourcing is also a part of it, but it's a smaller element. You will not be only valued for sourcing. This is okay. This is a peak performance model that we have built at Recruiting Monk. So there are certain core recruiting competencies which you will have to build first of all, and this is a given. This is taken for granted, and not sorry, not taken for. This is a given. This is assumed that you already know this. How do you conduct a methodical GDD construction, advanced internet social recruiting techniques, fitment analysis and candidate pre-screening, stakeholder engagement. These are your core recruiting competencies. By the time you are spent 2-3 years in your recruiting career or even 4 years, you should be a master at it. Okay. Then by the time you are, I spoke about an inflection point for recruiting professionals, right? 4 to 7 years, 4 to 8 years. That's when you start becoming an expert on research, talent research, HR tech. Can you drive HR tech agenda within your own recruiting functions? Can you implement design thinking and agile recruiting principles in whatever small little ways that you can? Can you work with talent analytics? These are what we refer to as broad functional TA competencies that we cut across. Then there are performance drivers, which will give you 2x, 3x, 4x performance, which will put your career on a fast track. What you could have possibly achieved in 20 years, can you achieve it in 8 years? Yes, you can. Talent strategies, communication, recruitment marketing, and employer and talent branding, right? These are your performance drivers. Assuming you're able to latch on to it, grab onto these particular skills, whatever you could have possibly achieved in 20 years as professional accomplishments, you could do it in less than half of the time. So this is a peak performance model. I think I will ask somebody from the team also to share this particular slide with all of you for your reference. So what are the top 10 skills you'll be valued in the post-COVID recruiting world? Storytelling. I'm telling you, I mean, I don't have time to talk about the power of storytelling. Maybe I can ask Ashwak to have another webinar, maybe. I mean, because I'm very passionate about storytelling.
Uh, Raghu, can I just like pause you for a moment here?
Please.
To all the participants, hi, this is Piyush. To all the participants, I really need to tell you, Raghu resource in storytelling sessions. I have attended this session. He's and these both of these guys are an amazing resource to talk to you on these parts. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Yeah, storytelling, I tell you, I mean, it's a very powerful skill, extremely powerful skill, and that's an area where I've done a lot of work over the last few years. Top one skill is storytelling. You please become a storyteller, and it's a very, very difficult skill to acquire, because to be an effective storyteller, it needs deeper, fundamental change within yourself as a person. Unless you don't go deeper, deal with your inhibitions, work on your natural confidence. I mean, you need deeper changes to become a storyteller. It's not a cosmetic change. Structure, talent discovery, collaborative hiring. Can you bring in agile principles, which is shorter feedback loops, is one very, very high potent agile principle that you can bring as part of your talent acquisition processes. Okay, we've built agile pod models for the recruiting world, and that's one of the areas where we in the post-COVID time, where we had a lot of, because April, May, June we had no work, me and Ashfaq, right? So we did a lot of research on how we could borrow best of agile principles in the recruiting world. You should adopt agile and design thinking, talent branding, talent communities. I've spoken about it. And research, which is not about trying to find out how many resumes are now clear. You have to go beyond that. Candidate journey mapping and assessment process calibration. This is in my personal opinion. This will be the top 10 skills in the post-COVID recruiting world if you want to future-proof your recruiting career. This is what some of them had to say, but I don't want to bore you with this. This is self-explanatory, and I will share this slide. I will leave you with this particular slide for a few seconds. This is very self-explanatory. If you don't see yourself as a marketeer, you will find it very difficult to stay relevant in the recruiting world. And we all know what it takes to be a marketeer. I mean, maybe another session. So what should you do now? Learn to learn. See, it's like this, right? This is not only for recruitment professionals. This is for anybody. The pace at which the world is going to change in the way it will conduct business in the post-COVID world, you can't even imagine. Which means learning to learn becomes the most important skill for all of us. Learning to learn will be your $1 million skill. And there is something called as focused learning, and there is something called as diffused learning. Pre-COVID world, focused learning would have yielded results. You can make a note of these two terms. This will be very, very, very relevant for in the post-COVID world, given the nature of changes that are happening. You will need to be a diffused learner, not focused learner. There's enough content out there in Google, focused learning versus diffused learning. Embrace tech, gain deeper understanding of the businesses that you hire for. When I say deeper understanding, you've heard this a million times. I can showcase that to you. Hey, I will be extending this session by about 5 or 10 minutes. I hope it is all right. I'm assuming it is all right. Yeah. Okay. So career progression. So, hey, cut all this GAN. Tell me exactly what I should be doing. Somebody may ask that question, right? So we did some work for you, and I will share this particular slide with you guys. Okay, if you're a recruiter, these are the skills. If you're a talent business partner, these are the skills. If you're a TA head, these are the skills. Another way to look at it is, if you want to become a TA BP from a recruiter, acquire these skills. Right? If you want to become a TA head or a manager from being a TA BP, acquire those skills. Okay, you can read this both the ways, but there are common threads. The one that cuts across. It doesn't matter what role you are in within a recruitment function or a recruiting business. These are your common threads that will cut across. Okay, so this is how I would map career growth and competency correlation. Okay, which means if you want to move into the next orbit, these are the skills that you need to acquire. And if you see, most of these are highly technical competencies. This whole notion and the worldview that recruitment is an art, it is a flair, you can pick it up on the job, I wouldn't agree with any of those conversations. It's an art and flair. I think those days are gone. 90% of the competencies that you see here are highly technical competencies, which require specific learning interventions to acquire these skills. This is not something that you can just learn it on the fly, on the job, thinking it's an art and all that. No. Maybe those conversations were relevant in your pre-COVID world, but not anymore. Okay, this is how I would map career growth and competencies and how they correlate to each other. I hope this particular slide was helpful. Yeah, and yeah, so what should I do to future-proof my talent acquisition career? I mean, each slide I could have spent an hour. I am actually tempted to, but given the nature of time and I am actually rushing, which I'm not liking. I'm generally not a webinar guy. I mean, each session of mine, I like to have detailed conversations, but yeah, this is what it is at the end of the day, right? So how do you future-proof your talent acquisition career? I have 6 mantras to begin with. I am not even suggesting that these are the only mantras. I just picked the top 6 mantras. Yeah, know your markets inside out. What are the evolving markets resulting in evolving talent needs? If you are working for a tech business, services company, GICs, captives, products, e-commerce, you have to know and track and keep a tab on how enterprises are using tech. What are the technical advancement? What are the emerging tech trends? All those, you have to know your markets inside out. Get closer to talent markets. What are the job families that you hire for? Understand deeper nuances of those job families, KRAs, and how are roles evolving. How is a full stack developer at Dell different from a full stack developer at Amazon versus a full stack developer at Goldman Sachs, captive? How is a full stack developer in a services versus a products versus a captive versus a startup? You have to have this deeper understanding of the job families. How are the KRAs and how do these people actually get measured, and skill composition, all of that. That's when I would say you're getting closer to a talent market. Talent movement trends, from what kind of organizations are how are these candidates moving from what kind of organization to what kind of organization? How are the preferences changing? People from DevOps, are they moving to some other roles? ISAS to PaaS and SaaS, and so basically talent movement trends, if you're able to spot and keep a track of, that will give you significant understanding of your talent markets. Changing candidate preferences. Oh, this is the biggest of all, right? I mean, you have to know. I mean, how are your candidate preferences changing? Become a marketeer, embrace talent branding, adapt to recruitment marketing paradigm, and learn to bring a blend of outbound and inbound into your recruiting channels. Yeah, be research and data driven. Ensure that all your decisions are metrics and data driven, not opinion driven. Have a research mindset. Be collaborative and make technology your best friend. Okay, so I've spoken about this. I'm just sort of summarizing this in one particular slide. Okay, right? So when I say talent research, what do I mean? Can you spot and identify talent movement trends? Can you analyze role influx and outflux data? Can you leverage talent landscape data to aid critical talent decisions? How do you ascertain skill adoption rate for a given tech or a given role? These are some examples of talent research capabilities. Okay, so I spoke about tech. Yeah, so we came up with this for one of our customers as part of our consulting assignment. So there are particularly 3 different levers in tech: efficiency, effectiveness, and experience. And there are different set of tools available to drive efficiency, to drive effectiveness, to drive experience. So depending on what's your corporate agenda, your TA agenda or a CHRO agenda, you decide. So you don't try to boil the ocean. When I say go adopt tech, when I say go digital, a typical problem that I see, typical challenge that I see in the approach is we try to attack all the problems. I mean, it's not possible, right? So for some of them, it's the efficiency. For some of them, it's effectiveness. For some of them, it's experience. So depending on what your business need is, or your CHR agenda is for, for the quarter or for the year, you choose an appropriate tech transformation agenda. Yeah. So that's what I'm trying to demonstrate by this particular slide. So this is a typical talent acquisition metrics universe. I spoke about being metrics driven. I spoke about being data driven. Just look diversity of metrics that you can actually measure in a typical TA context. And if you have to be metrics and data driven, you pick what you can measure, you pick what you can constantly improve, you pick what is important for your org context. If you are hiring at scale, if CPH is a problem, then you see most of them hire CPH, but very few hire cost recruiting ratio and source cost per hire. I recommend you start doing that. For some of them, they have a talent attraction issue or a brand issue or a brand recall issue. There I would say track employment branding metrics, right? For some of them, they have significant amount of business but low fulfillment rate, which is leading to a lot of business revenue loss and business loss, whatever you want to call it. Then I would talk about impact metrics. So depending on your business context, again, depending on your CHRO agenda, you decide which metric is important for you and you drive. So what is your most significant step to end my session? I would say consistently build on your ability to engage and influence stakeholders. And if you can constantly build on this particular competence or ability, I would say you are more or less future proofing your recruitment career. So yeah, and that particular note, yeah, I would say my session comes to an end. I hope I've managed time very well. I'm very bad at managing time. Yeah, so yeah, Ashwak, over to you. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Raghu. Thanks for taking us through on how do we evolve, right, and in the TA career and how things are changing in the TA landscape, right? Thanks for your time. I hope the participants had a lot of takeaways from this session. So, folks, what you do is probably you can shoot out questions on the chat window, right? Because if we open the mic, I think too many people at a time, maybe you'll go for it. So maybe you can put questions on the chat window. I think we can pick it up from the chat window. That will be fairly easier, right? So you can start shooting out your questions on the chat window, right? And meanwhile, I'll just take this opportunity to explain you about the coaching series or the mini diploma which we are launching, which is starting from like Saturday, sorry. So what we are doing there is we are ensuring recruiters become future proof, right? So whatever Raghu mentioned in terms of how we need to adopt storytelling, how we need to get into understand HR implementation, right? And sourcing as a skill will get de-skilled, right? So keeping all this in mind, so how can you de-skill sourcing? Sourcing is just patterns, right? Just a bunch of patterns. You can come up with these patterns, then you will not be measured based on number of resumes you're delivering, right? Okay, it has 5 resumes, 10 resumes, you'll not be measured. Today we are measured based on that. So tomorrow you'll be measured based on experience and other metrics. So keeping all this in mind, we've come with this mini diploma. We completed first batch, and we are launching the second batch from this Saturday. So if you're looking forward to join this, so you can just drop a bus to Yashwant. He'll take you through this, and you can get more details on this, right? So I'll just wrap this on this. So yep, we'll start taking some questions.
I think we had one question by Piyush, but he left after that. So yeah, he asked, what is the blend of an inbound and outbound recruiting? So so your inbound recruiting source channels are your natural traffic that is coming to your career site, or your jobs landing page, where people apply for your jobs as a result of your job promotion or employer branding or talent branding. Outbound recruiting channels is when you actively reach out to candidates to check their interest levels and to elicit interest in a job opening that you may have. So that's what it means. Okay, can you deep dive into pair sourcing? Yeah, of course, yes. So pair sourcing is, see, typically as recruiters, particularly in a corporate setup, a significant amount of our time, energy, and mind share is spent in managing stakeholders. Right? They give us a purple squirrel JD, which is 8, 10 different skill combination. They want all of them in the same candidate and within a budget, somebody who's an immediate joiner, right? And how much ever you try to tell them back and forth conversations, they don't get convinced, with our data or with our status updates or with our observations. So what we do with some of our customers is, we create multiple search strings, covering different data sets for a particular given JD. And these are pre-constructed search models. And in a 10-minute window, we help the recruiter shares the screen with the hiring manager, and they do joint talent discovery for a given job role. So where the hiring manager in a 10-minute window gets to actually get a first-hand feel of what kind of talent is available. So that's what I mean by pair sourcing. I hope I answered your question. Any difference between strategies for agencies versus corporate environment? Yeah, of course, yes. Wait. Pair sourcing I addressed. Do companies look for EVP like? I didn't understand the Sharath Mishra's question. What do you mean by do companies look for EVP? Sharath,
Unmute.
Sharath, you're on mute. I mean, okay, I'm assuming that you want to know more about EVP in the recruiting process. See, it's like this, right? We spoke about candidate mindshare, and we spoke about struggling TA functions. I would say, actually, I don't like using that word, but that's actually the fact. We're not able to grab attention and candidates. So there will be certain unique attributes to our employer brand, and there will be certain unique employee value proposition that each of the organization has. So when you're able to articulate that and express that to your potential candidates, your ability to capture candidate mindshare will be much higher than just talking about a JD. That's what I meant by saying that. Okay, then can the strategies be different for agencies and corporate? Absolutely. The point is the generic tech recruiting companies will go out of business. Especially the permanent recruitment businesses, which are generic by nature, which we will do anything and everything, services, products, captives, right from Java, .NET, Salesforce, ERP, digital cloud, will do everything. So generic recruitment shops will eventually shut shops and go home. I don't think there is any future for generic recruitment tech shops. The future is for tech recruiting companies, which can go deeper, penetrate much deeper into talent communities and talent markets, build a niche and build a following, build that resonance with a particular talent community, which you can leverage at the time when you get a demand. Okay. And I'm just trying to give a quick answer. I'm not satisfied with the answer because it's a quick answer because of the shortage of time that I have. But yeah, for corporate TA environments, it's different, right? You have your own employer brand, you have your own EVP, you can create your own unique journey maps, you can create your own calibrated assessment systems. The whole approach there is different. But for an agency, you have to choose your niche, choose your vertical, choose your technology area, choose your geography, and go deeper and deeper. And that's your sweet spot. I hope I answered your question, Abhinav. Okay, no more questions, I am assuming. Okay. Okay, there was one specific question on storytelling which Rukmini asked a little bit more, and this is the last one, and then we can close the session. I'm sorry, I'm rushing because I generally don't rush. If I have a 1 hour session, I factor 2 hours, but unfortunately, I have a call at 8:30 before which I need to grab my dinner and then get ready for the call. So this is the last one. So yeah, what's storytelling, right? So basically, I'll give a quick answer. So the point is, the significant amount of the critically important decisions that we take in our life does not happen in a logical realm, it happens in the emotional realm. Okay, and that's the ultimate truth and the fact, which is we think most of our decisions are in the logical realm, but most of our decisions are actually in the emotional realm. So the point is, if you are talking to people with facts and information, you're actually dealing with people in their logical realm. You know, we have a 1 lakh square feet office, we have a 2-acre campus in Electronic City, 1 lakh employees across the world. We are the top 5, we are Fortune 50, Fortune 100. We have that, we are this. These are all facts and information. You are just, dealing with logical realm. Okay. But people hardly get engaged, driven, influenced in a logical realm. People get influenced, people get engaged in their emotional realm. So if you want to appeal to people in their emotional realm, you can hardly deal with facts and information and data. You have to deal with stories, because stories, you can get people emotionally invested in a conversation, which means they are in the emotional realm, which means your ability to drive candidate decisions and influence candidate decisions will be much higher. Okay, so which is why storytelling becomes a very, very, very potent armory. I would say a weapon in your armory. I'm wrong choice of words. Anyway, sorry for that. But yeah, it's your most important, armory, right? To deal with your madness in the talent markets today. So if you are a storyteller, and if you can have conversations in the form of a storytelling template than an information and data template, your ability to get candidates emotionally is very high, which means you can drive and influence decisions. This is the short response to that question. I hope I answered your question, Rukmini. Okay, thank you very much, all of you. I hope you all enjoyed the session. I hope I was able to add value because you have all taken out 1 hour of yours on a nice evening, which you could have otherwise spent anywhere. I feel privileged that all of you thought it was worthwhile to spend an hour with us. I hope it was worth it. I hope we added value. Okay, fantastic. Thank you, folks. Thank you very much. Good luck to all of you, and stay safe.